Okay, so let's get started then. So the most popular topic was the anti-inflammatory foods, which I was surprised about. I thought it sounded like quite a boring topic compared to the other stuff, but I think maybe because people's awareness of inflammation and its link to disease, etc., has made it a more popular topic. So the issue with inflammation is we commonly experience inflammation when we're talking about like cuts. That's probably where we most interact with this idea of inflammation. Like you still have a cut and then it will get inflamed, it'll go red, and that's what people commonly associate with inflammation. But that's from the outside. When it's from the inside, it's really bad. So internal inflammation is not a good thing. Yeah, it's actually been linked to 8 of the 10 biggest diseases. So by reducing inflammation, we reduce diseases. It says in the study that all told, inflammation is involved in at least 8 of the 10 of the top 10 leading causes of death in the United States. Understanding how inflammation promotes poor health and when we can intervene to reduce inflammation-related disease risk should thus be a top scientific and public priority. So I wasn't really aware of inflammation until kind of, at this point that I'd studied it. So I think you do sort of hear it, but the fact that it's kind of like a big cause, and this is where the issue with nutrition is that we focus a lot on weight because it's a visual thing. And then there's a lot of sort of embarrassment of being overweight and these sorts of things. But actually, it has a big role to play in terms of diseases. So if you want to look at long-term health and just being healthy, then inflammation is a really big thing. Yeah. It's been likened to the discovery of germ theory. So it's actually been seen as, when we learned about low-grade systemic and chronic inflammation, what they call meta-inflammation, it was a huge discovery. It was something, a lot of people understand germ theory, so you can kind of place it alongside something like that, yeah? And what we're going to talk about today is just this idea of the dietary inflammatory index. So a way to see whether the food we eat is pro-inflammatory or not, yeah? And it's quite straightforward. So you have something called the inflammatory index. But the question is, before we talk about that, is inflammation actually linked to, is actually linked to, so someone just put a comment. Yeah, okay, I'll come back to the comments later, yeah? So yeah, we said that Khaled, 8 of the 10 top 10 diseases. You're right, 100%. So is it linked to inflammation? Sorry, is it linked to obesity? There's one thing inflammation being linked to diseases, which is quite well established, but is it actually linked to obesity? Because obesity is all about calories in, calories out. So they say, yeah. But there have been studies showing that it is actually linked to obesity as well. So obesity has been associated with elevated levels of C-reactive protein. So C-reactive protein is the primary way that you can measure. There's also different ways to measure inflammation. One of the main ways is to measure your CRP levels. So a marker of inflammation and predictor of cardiovascular risk. The objective of the systematic review and meta-analysis was to establish or to estimate the association between obesity and CRP according to sex, ethnicity, age. So this is the way that you measure inflammation levels. And then it says at the bottom that obesity is associated with elevated levels of CRP and association and stronger in women and North American Europeans. The sex difference only emerged in adulthood, yeah? Or only emerges in adulthood. So you can see definitely there's that link between inflammation and obesity. And also the fat itself excretes. So there's another way. When you're fat, you excrete inflammatory chemicals as well. So the excess of macronutrients in adipose tissue stimulates them to release inflammatory mediators. Okay, so food ideally needs to be anti-inflammatory. There's another way just to look at food. So to ask yourself, is the food that I'm eating anti-inflammatory? Yeah. So this is the inflammatory index, the dietary inflammatory index, and all I'm going to talk about is a few things that are anti-inflammatory, which you can incorporate into your diet, and also the fact that these things are not just anti-inflammatory, but some practical things as I tried personally to incorporate these into my diets and the experience that I had, yeah? So in terms of spices, you have pepper, and it's been given a minus here, which means that it's anti-inflammatory of 0.397, yeah? So if you like your spices has a number of different benefits. It contains, like, if anything contains something called capsaicin, that would be not just anti-inflammatory, but also activates something called brown fat, so increases your metabolism. Also garlic as well. So garlic is anti-inflammatory. It's more anti-inflammatory than pepper. Ginger as well. is more inflammatory, so you can see it has a higher anti-inflammatory score. But the king of the spices is turmeric. Yeah. Now I've tried to incorporate turmeric just like on random things, just to see if I can eat more turmeric. What I found personally is that unless you cook with turmeric, the taste itself, just like adding it on as a flavor, didn't work well for me. So what I started to do instead was to take it as a supplement. It's a lot more expensive, but often you get like turmeric with ginger as a supplement, and sometimes also black pepper as well. So the one I have is turmeric, ginger, and black pepper. So there's three of the things there. The problem with all supplementation is that you get excited initially, but then constantly having supplementation is a problem, and then also it's more expensive as well. Yeah, but it has a you can see here a big anti-inflammatory score. They also increase satiety as well. So spices have a number of different benefits as well, also that it increases satiety. I don't know if people have heard of nutritional yeast. Aldi started making its own brand nutritional yeast, but then it stopped. So I don't think it's that popular. The only place that I can get it from, you can get it online obviously, but you can also get it from places like Asda. You need to go to the free from area. So the free from, which is not something you would necessarily go to if you were, unless you had like some sort of problem, gluten issue or something like that. But nutritional yeast, the nice thing with nutritional yeast is it has like a cheesy flavor. So it can be a really nice thing that you can put on other foods as well. It's really tasty. But it's anti-inflammatory. And then in terms of drinks, black and green tea. So one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was to stop never to put sugar in my tea. So I've just always, whenever I had tea, I've always had it as no sugar, because otherwise it sort of defies the purpose. You're just having sugar then, and then it rots your teeth as well. But then also more recently is to stop having milk in my tea, which at first took a bit getting used to, but I don't like tea at all with milk in it anymore. So that was a really good piece of advice. And if you have those two things, then the black tea or the green tea, even better, becomes anti-inflammatory. Yeah. And then in terms of food components, it's omega-3. So omega-3 you can find in fish as anti-inflammatory, and something called flaxseed or linseed, but you have to make sure that it's milled. Yeah, so you can get these. This is really nice as an alternate, like a good form of carbs. Yeah, so if you have that, you really want to have carbs. There are healthier carbs. So linseed is a good example of a healthy carb, and it has like that carby flavor. If you ever tried it, yeah, it's basically a seed, but it's very, very healthy. Yeah, and also walnuts as well. Yeah, walnuts as well. Now, in terms of fish, there is a problem with fish having pollutants, but the British Dietetic Association still recommends that you have fish twice a week. Yeah, even though it has these pollutants, it's weighing up positives and negatives. And then you have something called flavones as well. What are flavones? Well, you find them in actually, we'll come back to flavones. Fiber as well. Fiber is a huge thing. Fiber, it has so many different benefits. One of them is the fact that it's anti-inflammatory as well. And then fruits, vegetables, legumes, and whole grains is where you find fiber. So more in legumes and whole grains. So you have to try and, I mean, for me, my go-to whole grain is oats. Just I'll put it in a bowl, put some milk with it. This one here. For me, like if you can get it from Aldi, you can get it from anywhere. So you can buy this from Aldi, you can buy it in all supermarkets. Yeah. And then legumes is trying to just have just add it into salads, add it into meals as well. Even if you don't like any meal, you can just add some additional legumes in it as well. Now, in terms of flavones, chamomile tea is a good source of it, and also fruit and veg as well. Parsley, bell peppers, celery, apples, and oranges. Yeah. And it reduces C-reactive protein levels. This is what we're talking about, this marker of inflammation. These reduce these things. And that's it.